Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Very excited to have Gary Hayslip with me, CISO, author, general man about information and cybersecurity, somebody that a lot of us probably know and are lucky enough to bump into. I think last time I bumped into you was RSA at the W bar, probably with quite a few other people.
Yeah, there were actually quite a few of us there. It's kind of weird how at RSA we all kind of congregate at a couple of hotel bars, right around the Moscone, and everybody just kind of comes together. And we're all sitting and talking. It's just kind of it's like family coming together, a couple times a year.
It definitely is. Yeah, I feel like people are always around the same areas. In fact, I think there's times when I've spent more time at the W Bar or Four Seasons than I have actually at the conference.
We actually joke that there's a conference outside the conference, and it tends to be that. It tends to be these gatherings and stuff, that have nothing to do with the talks. It's just we're all together and we all kind of come together.
Very true, very true. Well, look, if you could let everybody know sort of what you're up to right now, that would be great. And then we'll dive into a bit of your career path, because I know it's been an interesting one.
Well, I mean, let's see, what am I up to? What am I not up to? I'm currently writing book number 7 with Nathan Case and Kirsten Davies. We're writing a book together on leadership and ethics and stuff, dealing with cybersecurity. And it's we're having a lot of fun. We're about halfway through, and I find that the three of us bounce things off of each other, and we do really well, writing together. So I'm in the middle of writing that book. Obviously doing cybersecurity, physical security. Cybersecurity, physical security, audit, investment due diligence. What else does SoftBank have me doing? I'm sure if I sit here,
might be quicker to say what you're not doing.
Risk, working with compliance. I sit there and I got about 5 or 6 hats lined up in front of me, just depending on which one I'm putting on for the day, or for the hour. Working at SoftBank, and then just doing a lot of advisory stuff, advisory board work with everything from San Diego State and their IT program to Night Dragon and Team 8 and Praetorian and different startups and stuff. So it's just I love working with companies and either being on it as a board member, as part of a board or advising board. So it's been a lot of fun. I mean, after I went through the whole the NACD certification process, which was in a lot of ways brutal, just so much new stuff to learn. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I love being on boards and working on boards and stuff, and helping companies grow. And so it's just, that's what I'm up to. I'm constantly, either traveling, going from, conferences and different meetings, or, working up in Menlo Park at SoftBank. It's just been very busy.
I mean, that's what they say. If you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm sure something like that's the same, right?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because it's like the whole year is just flying. You're just so busy. And then by about December timeframe, I usually take the whole month off, and I think I sleep 24 hours the first couple of days.
Wow.
Just sleep, but it's just it's good kind of taking a break, during the year. But no, just busy, whether I'm writing or speaking or working with people and mentoring and stuff. It's been a lot of fun.
Love that. Well, let's dive into how you even got into cyber, or even before that. What were you doing before you were in cyber? Also, information security, information assurance. I'm not sure what we should call it.
Yeah, it's the thing about this is that and I've talked about this before. I mean, most of us, old bald guys with beards that are in cyber, we're involved when we were teenagers. I mean, I was hacking and breaking things, when I was like 12 years old, and got the traditional law enforcement call to the house, and my dad was not happy and proceeded to beat my ass after. He said he decided to explain to me how happy he was not with me after they left. That didn't stop me. I still, I was going to do what I was going to do, and I love computers. But it was like, so I mean, I was doing that regardless. And then, went to college, like everybody, like, most of us think we have to do out of high school. I didn't do very well. I went into college, spent more time partying. I think I had a .9 GPA,
Wow.
which is actually a fact, and, not very proud of that, but it's like, it was one of those moments in your life when you kind of realize, what the hell am I doing? And I was embarrassed that I had, used a lot of my parents' money and nothing to come from it, and so I proceeded for like the next year and a half to, just pay for everything myself and work and go to college and get my GPA up to about a 2.5. And then I realized this is a lot of hard work. This sucks. And so you know, working full time and going to school. So I joined the military, and so what I was doing, I guess, before I really got into cyber was, I was in the U.S. Navy
Mhm.
and working in advanced weapon systems, and that's where I got into, heavily into advanced electronics and everything from phased array radar systems to, computer systems and all kind. I mean, it was pretty amazing when the Navy sends you to school. They send you to school. You don't go ahead and take a class for 2 months and then you're out to the fleet to go work on weapon systems. No, you're in school for 6, 8, 12, 14 months, of intense training and hands-on labs and building and working on stuff. And then and so I had multiple schools like that, and then was, in the fleet. Um, but I was bored, because I was constantly playing with computers and finding the excuse to go play with computers, and do things with computers and networking and just building stuff, on board ship and everything. And and I just kind of, even though the Navy wanted me to work in electronics, I was fascinated and still playing with computers. And so no matter what command I was at or where I was at, I was constantly, with the, with the geeks. We all were together, doing computers. We were gaming. We were building stuff. We were sharing. This is early '90s. We're sharing
Yeah.
software. We're on bulletin boards together. We're doing all kinds of stupid stuff together. And about that time was, I got into cyber, and it was called information assurance back then. And it was just doing the basic stuff. It was doing, the basic things. And I was appalled that, okay, we're doing the basic stuff, but I can still hack into these things. You know, just doesn't
Mhm.
make any sense. But I thought it was cool, but it freaked me out that in the early '90s I could break into all kinds of DoD systems that I had access to that I shouldn't be getting into, which really freaked me out. And then which more and more I started leading towards security. But first I decided to take this long day trip into network engineering, you know, and that's really where I was at. I was heavily involved in network engineering. I built a lab here at my house in my garage where I had a whole rack of equipment. I went shopping on eBay and bought routers and switches and stuff. And this was before, virtualized software and everything. So,
Mhm.
I had a couple of systems that were Unix, and I had a couple of systems that were Windows, and multiple systems that were Linux, and I had them all tied into, switches, and I had a couple of routers, and, I was sucking so much bandwidth down in that garage that my internet provider actually started rate limiting me, and they actually came on out to visit. One of their guys come on out to visit because he was trying to figure out how I was sucking so much bandwidth down. He hung out with me for like 3 hours in the garage. He was geeking out with everything that I
Yeah, I
was
was
doing.
gonna say, I bet he was having fun.
Yeah, we were hanging out together, but I kind of realized that wasn't sustainable after a while. But I lived in that garage. I lived in the garage, and
And were you in the Navy still at this time? That you were still at this point still in the Navy? And did you transfer into the IT side of things within the Navy?
No,
Okay,
which
so you were still
which
doing
was
your electronics.
yeah, which was the crazy thing was the Navy was, bound and determined. We had trained you to be a fire controlman to work on advanced weapon systems, so you're going to do it. But oh, by the way, since you got all this IT experience and you've got all these IT certifications and all this computer stuff, we also want you to do this too. So you start learning really young. I started learning really early the whole multiple hats thing. So it didn't matter that I was, at the time I was a chief petty officer and I'm managing, multiple, weapon systems and teams of people managing missiles and fire control systems and stuff like that. I also was managing all of the computers and managing our networks and verifying that and working with the guys on the classified systems that they was encrypted and it was it was crazy, but you know you can't get any experience like that today.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, it was intense, over a number of years. And that's how I got my first, honestly, that's how I got my first CIO gig. I was in the US Navy. I was at a command here in San Diego. And they saw me doing all this IT stuff, and I was finishing up my bachelor's degree at the University of Maryland. And they were like, "Oh, we want you." So the next thing I know, I'm the CIO running IT, but I'm still doing weapon system stuff for them as well. You know, and that's how I ended up being the CIO. And I had a whole bunch of IT people working for me, and and then we were in the process of upgrading all of the networks, and we were doing both unclassified and classified networks. So I was working extensively with the classified networks as well. And this was one of the commands I was at where we didn't have a room to put the classified networks in. And so, one of my guys that I work with, we actually built one. They gave us a credit card and we rented out a U-Haul and went to Home Depot and bought all of the drywall and wood and everything we wanted to do. And inside this space and inside this building, we built what was going to be a secure room around where the sprinkler systems and we kind of picked this one area out around the sprinkler systems and the smoke detectors and everything. And we figured, okay, this is where the walls are going to be. And that's what we did. We put the walls up, we insulated them and sealed them. We got up into the air ducts and sealed all of those. So you could not seal them, but we put, blocking in there so you couldn't get into the rooms, and sound masking and everything. And we put the secured doors and everything on the space, and we turned it into a secured room when we got it certified. We built it from scratch so that we could put a classified network in that space. But that's what I'm saying is you don't get experience like that today. But we were doing this in the late '90s or early 2000s, and that was like my first CIO role. And then at that time we were consolidating networks, and they needed somebody to be a CISO. So now I was doing both of them. I was doing the command information security officer and the CIO. And I was also still dealing with weapon systems, which required me to go out on a ship every once in a while and do stuff. So yeah, it was crazy. But the experience was just amazing. And at the same time, I still had the lab in my garage. And so on the weekends, and when I'd get home at night, I'd be out there working on stuff. And then on the weekends, I was volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club, or I was volunteering at nonprofits around here, and I was running their small business servers and I was running their email servers because I needed the experience to put on my resume to show that I could do IT, that I could run networks, that I could. And so I was I was doing and I did that for a number of years. I just anything and everything that I could do to get experience and to learn and to work on certs and to add all of these kind of things to my resume. And so it was it was pretty intense.
I I think, like, as you're talking through it and telling me about it there, you're right. It's really hard to get that experience, but a lot of the people I speak to are in a similar situation, and a lot of the advice that I give and I see others give is to go out and volunteer and see whatever you can do to help other people to build your resume. And I think a lot of the stuff that you went through there is very similar to what people need to do now, and some of the same struggles. So things haven't necessarily changed a huge amount.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, one of my In fact, one of the community colleges here in San Diego, they've got a full-on Cisco lab, and they offer all of these Cisco certifications, and the state pays for them. You don't have to pay for anything. You just have to, you get signed up and actually go to class and pass your certifications. And so, I mean, so that's how I did all my Cisco certs and stuff. And I volunteered to work in that lab. I volunteered, on the weekends to be in there to reconfigure and set up new routers and switches and to run cable. And, and I mean, my fingertips were bloody doing Cat5 cable and stuff, but, you learn, but that's how you learn. You've got to go ahead and volunteer and get in and do these things, and so, I mean, and I know you and I were talking about, like, when I hire, what do I look
Yeah.
for? And I look for that kind of stuff. I mean, I look for on a person's resume. All right, I just haven't, been to school and then after school went and did a couple of jobs. What I'm looking for is, are you involved in the community? Are you doing stuff with B-Sides and with DEF CON? Are you doing projects? What kind of home, networks and stuff like that are you building at the house? What I want to know is, what were you working on last night? What were you programming and building and stuff like that? What were you doing with your Raspberry Pi at home that you were building and showing your 12-year-old? That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for, is not so much that you've got the education, but do you have the passion? Because that's what is required in cyber. We don't work regular hours. We work all the time, and it's pretty, and again, it's pretty intense, and you've got to have that kind of passion for the different types of projects and the different things that we're constantly, doing. And so I look for those things, not just the regular stuff that, the AI algorithm that they're screening the resumes tells you to go look for. I'm looking for, the extra stuff.
Yeah.
How involved are you in the community? Are you doing these things with these nonprofits? And what were you doing for them? Kind of stuff.
Yeah, whenever I think of people, I always think of our industry almost like it's not a career; it's almost like a lifestyle choice. Working in security, because you can't help it. You pick up I've got one CISO that he said to me, if the first thing I could do when I interviewed somebody is say, pass me your phone and look at their news feed, that would be a good idea of how passionate they're about cybersecurity, because you know how they work, feeds you more stuff that you read, and if it's full of cybersecurity news, the person really is interested in it. Not that I think anybody's going to be handing over phones in interviews, and he said it like, I know I'm not allowed to ask that, but I do think it's like passion's the one thing you've got to find. And if I think of all the people I know that have been successful, and some of the great people we've placed, that passion is really obvious. They're not doing it because, I can earn six figures and I've heard it's paid really well. It's the ones that are like, I love this and I build computers and I do this and I don't have a lot of spare time, but this is what I do with my time when I've got it. So yeah, I 100% agree. And maybe that's one of the reasons why cybersecurity recruiters are still around, at least at the moment, because it's hard. That sort of passion is hard to pick up on just a paper resume, or it's meeting people, getting to know them, and getting to open up about what they do. So for the moment at least, there'll still be a few of us around, and I'll still have a business for a little while.
Yeah, and it's fun too, because I mean, I have a group of recruiters that I constantly talk to, because I like to see what's going on in industry, and hey, I like to see what opportunities are out there, and it's and it is fun. I mean, those that have been doing it for quite a while, that are used to our community and the squirrels that are in our community. It's kind of funny, you sit there and you chat with them, some of the stories that they have, and I spend a lot of time talking with them, because, like I said, I'm one of those CISOs that has also been a CIO and has done all these different types of roles. And you don't
that sort of passion is hard to pick up on just a paper.
Traditionally meet, a company wants a CISO and they think it's this, but I'm all of this, and they don't really know what to do with that, and it's someone like, yourself, it's a recruiter that's worked with CISOs that does the interpretation.
Yeah.
That does, hey, Gary would actually be ideal for you, because not only can he do this, but he can also back up this. And he's very familiar with these types of business units because he's got experience there. And and that's what I'm saying is, I think that's the recruiters that know the individual that spent time with them and know, the skills that they bring, does a very good job of the interpretation piece and being able to help the business see, oh, this person is a good fit, not for what we think we need, but what we're going to need 6, 12, 18 months from now when we're going to go IPO, or when we're going to pivot and bring on these new product lines, and this person has experience in this. So yeah, it's you know and that's what I look at, when I talk with recruiters as well, because I wrote an article about this and actually talked to and it was on purpose to try to help people understand that, hey, the recruiters aren't there to go ahead and be your best friends and do everything for you. No. You have to meet them halfway, and they actually are working for the business and trying to find them somebody. And your job is to go ahead and work with them and make sure they understand you and the skills and everything that you bring, so they can interpret all of that and help the business see if you're a good fit or not. And there's a whole process there. And I find a lot of people when they work with recruiters don't understand that. And it's, which is the reason why I wrote this article, to say, no. For someone who's been at this a while, it's a lot more complicated than what you think. And oh, by the way, you got homework to do. You've got to be involved in this.
Yeah, I've done a few talks around that. I did one at DEF CON, and quite a few at B-Sides Las Vegas. I think B-Sides Las Vegas, 9th year I've been speaking there, and definitely talk about like that. And it's quite popular now. How do you work with recruiters? And they get a bunch of recruiters up on a panel, and Kathleen Smith, I'm not sure if you know Kathleen, that runs the Village Higher Ground. Amazing, lovely person. Hey, Kathleen, if you're watching this. But like, we do that almost every year. We do a panel that talks about that, because people don't realize that. How do you work with a recruiter to get the best out of them and get the best for you? And there's a lot of ways to do that. And you're right, at the end of the day, businesses are the ones that are paying our bills. So that's where we're trying to fit, even when in some cases, especially recently, the market's been more candidate driven. That's kind of switched a little bit more recently. But yeah, it's an interesting area, and I mean, I love being part of it, so I'm lucky to do that, and I'm lucky to have these kind of conversations with CISOs, which I know when I speak to a lot of people in our industry, I kind of think it as normal, and they don't, and they're asking me questions, which is how this all came about in the first place. Yeah. So yeah, I love it. Well, let's get back to your career. So you were in the Navy. So at what point did you transition out, and how did that happen? Because I know that there's quite a few people that have been watching this that are in that sort of situation where they're going to transition soon or are thinking about it. So
well, I mean, I did my traditionally, you do like a, depending on how long you're going to stay in. I mean, for me, I was raised in a military family, and so when when I went in the military, I wasn't thinking going in 4 years and then out. I was thinking doing a career, which meant I was going to be in there for 20. Mm-hmm. You're going to do a 20-year career at a minimum, and then you're going to go on about your business, and honestly, I probably would have stayed in longer, but I had physically, I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I had done 8 deployments. I had done, multiple deployments for combat tours and stuff, where I had trashed my shoulders and my back and my knees and everything. And, the military does their best to go ahead and repair everything. And then they send you back on deployment and you trash yourself again, and so by the time, I think I was at my 16, 17 year mark, and my wife was just like, "What the hell are you doing?" And she goes, you're not in your 20s anymore, and she goes, you're going to be walking around in a cane or in a wheelchair by the time you're in your 60s. She goes, and she put her foot down. She was not happy with me at all, and she goes, and basically just told me, you need to be wrapping this up. You need to be calling it a day and wrapping it up. And but of course, I'm at my 16-year mark, so I've still got some time to go. But what ended up happening was, I mean, I was at the time I was on a ship, I was on a cruiser, and on deployment, and I blew my knee out for like the 3rd time, and in the process of getting surgery done, and they were rebuilding my knee, they also ended up rebuilding my shoulders. And then they were like, hey, we're not going to touch your back. You've got compressed vertebrae in your back, and we don't even want to go there. So they left that alone, thank God. But after all of these different, things, and all the rehabs and everything else. And I was like, woohoo, I'm ready for deployment. And my wife was like, the hell you are. She's like, no. Because by then I'm at about my 19-year mark, and she's like, "No, you are not ready for deployment." And that was about the time the U.S. Navy come back and said, "No, Senior Chief, you're not ready for deployment. You're
Right.
not going to sea anymore. And oh, by the way, if you can't go to sea anymore, you really shouldn't be in the Navy anymore. We're going to retire you." And so basically, what it was is I was hitting my 20-year mark, anyhow. And so they just said, hey, we're just going to medically retire you and call it a day, you know. And so at my 20-year mark, I was done. And I, at the time I was talking with, companies and I'll be honest with you, when you're military and you're transitioning, if you're officer or if you're enlisted, both of them are very different experiences. And what I mean by that is the officer side of the house, that's the managers, that's the executives. When they transition, they bring in somebody from KPMG or something like that. It's a like a week long or a couple week long course and stuff that they do, and it's helping them get ready to jump into private industry and going into business. If you're on the enlisted side, and understand it may have changed since then, but in 2007 when I was doing it, on the enlisted side, you got a 1 day class. That was it.
Right.
You got a 1 day class. It was about doing your resume, and that was about it. And you were out. And think about this. If you're somebody like me who's for the last 20 years, you've been in an organization where the paychecks were there, you're taking care of your family, medical is there, insurance is there, and everything, and all of a sudden you've got a due date that you're going to expire. It's coming up, and like a carton of milk is being chucked out of the fridge, and you're just like, holy crap, what am I going to do? Luckily for me, I had thought of years ago getting my degree done, getting my certs done, getting all this experience and everything done. My resume was a total freak show then because I didn't know how to write technical resume at the time. But I was busy with ISSA and ISACA and a lot of the professional organizations, so people helped me. And so my transition, typically you start like a couple of months before you're going to get out, and that's way too late. You should probably 2 years before you transition, you should be already planning.
Right.
You should already be planning, where am I going to live? What kind of job, industry do I want to get into? Wrapping up any kind of degree work or education that you're going to do. You should be, 2 years out, you should be planning ahead of time. So for me, I, did my transition and I went right into civil service. I was lucky the command I was at, I was working with, civil service, senior level IT, people and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like the military side, and it was all these, government employees that were there, and I was supporting them and working with them. And when they realized I was getting ready to leave, and I had been running cybersecurity for them for the last couple of years, and had combined all of the networks and gotten everything certified and stuff, they were like, "No, no, no, you're not leaving." And they had a GS position for me,
Right.
and so it was like I retired on a Friday and then come back as a civil servant on Monday, and working in the same desk, same office, doing the same job. That's kind of unheard of today, but I did that, and I loved it. I mean, I was the deputy CIO and the CISO, and it was just massive, networks and stuff, multiple teams working for me, security and IT teams, and I did, loved it, loved doing it. And I honestly thought that's what my career was going to be. I
Mm-hmm.
was, I had served in the military. Now I was going to serve my country, working for the federal government, doing cybersecurity. And, but in all honesty, the pay sucked.
Right.
I mean, it was, it was just, but, and I know a lot of people are like, when you serve in the government and everything, you don't really do it for money, and you don't, I mean, but, there comes a point where you've got children that are special needs. Both of my sons are neurodiverse. I've got bills to pay, and everything. And you kind of get to the point to where, and with me, I'm talking with my peers out in town. I'm networking with them. I'm at conferences with them, and they're
Yeah.
making 2, 3, 5, 10 times what I'm making, and I got just as much experience as they've got. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, note to self, there's something wrong with this equation here,
Yeah.
and, what ended up happening for me was, I had retired in 2007, and by 3 years in, by about 2010, I was doing, working extensively with admirals and a lot of SESs, senior executive service, which are the high level civilians, like the Secretary of the Navy is senior executive service, or the deputy secretaries are senior executive service. So I'm dealing with these type of individuals, in meetings, and they're talking budget and all of this stuff. And what I realized, was that they're talking a language I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. Even though I had a degree, I had, 2 degrees, they were in electrical engineering and in IT. They weren't in business, and so I went back and did my MBA, so that I could, I just felt that the more I progressed in this role and the more I progressed in my career, the more I was going to be dealing with executive teams,
Yeah.
and I really needed to understand and speak their language, not them come down and speak my language, and so I needed, and then I also found more and more times when I was in the, in the organization talking with the other business units, they spoke a different language. And a lot of it was business related. A lot of it was around, the technology and the data and the stuff that they were using, and they were trying to get projects done, and they were trying to drive revenue, and they were trying to do, and so it was, so the MBA became critical for me, and so here I am, I'm civil service, federal employee, by about 2013, I've been doing it for 6 years. I've got my MBA, and that was, and I thought, okay, I'm going to find some, senior executive role somewhere. Problem is that there's no cyber related senior executive roles or even CIO senior executive roles on the West Coast. They're all around DC, and my wife was like, we're not moving to DC, so I'm kind of like, okay, what am I going to do now, kind of thing. And that's where my, and that's where, and about that same time, my boss at the time said, you've got 90 days and then I'm going to fire you.
Oh,
And I'm like,
why was that?
what did I do wrong? What the hell
Yeah.
did I done? And he's like, he goes, no, he goes, you've outgrown this place. And to this day, he's still a close friend of mine and a mentor of mine. But he said, no, he goes, you've outgrown this place. He goes, I'm not going to let you sit in this office at this desk looking out the window, 10 years from now thinking I could have done this or I could have done that.
Mm.
You need to leave. And I was like, wow, I've never had anybody say, get out, kind of thing. And so, and it just happened to be, at that time, and still to this day, I still, go to different events and go to startup events and go to, incubator events. And I'm still very active in the cyber community and stuff here in San Diego and up in Menlo Park, up in the Bay Area. And it just happened to be here in San Diego. I'm at one of these events. I'm sitting here chatting with somebody. Come to find out, he's the CIO for the city of San Diego, and he's leaving, and a new CIO's come on board, and they're doing these massive smart city projects, and they don't have a CISO, and they know they need to do something, And so I interviewed for the role. Had no idea what I was getting involved in, but I knew I was being fired, so I needed to go. And so it's like, I jump over to this, working as part of the, the mayor's office, as the deputy CIO and CISO again, and it was, and I was there for at the city of San Diego. I was there for 4 years, and it was amazing. I mean, because the seventh largest city in the United States, it's like a $5 billion business. 12,000 plus employees. Over 100,000 plus endpoints across networks. We've got connections to, federal entities and connections to. I mean, it was insane, the stuff that we were doing, that we were connected to. I had everything from air conditioning units to police cars on the networks. Which was interesting. I mean, I'm like going into ambulances, and I'm sitting in an ambulance and I'm measuring how far the Wi-Fi in the ambulance extends outside the ambulance because I was afraid of HIPAA data getting loose,
Right.
while they're in there talking to the hospital, and they're sharing data back and forth for someone that they've got strapped on the gurney. And so we were curious as to, okay, could that data be stolen, and what would it be and so we were like, well, let's find out. So you load up some snooping software on playing and we're like playing around with ambulances, and then we started playing around with police motorcycles. What could you do with these? And and it was a lot of fun. In the 4 years, it was great. I mean, the pay was better, networking wise, community wise, it was amazing, but even at the end of 4 years there, I had been working extensively with startups, and one of my startups that I was working with had gotten acquired, and I helped WebRoot with the due diligence. And in the process, they were like, hey, as we're buying this company and everything, thank you for all the help and everything, because San Diego, the city of San Diego, was a customer, which was one of the reasons why they were talking to me. And they were like, hey, thanks for all the help. Oh, by the way, we need a CISO. Are you interested? And so I was like, woohoo! So so about 2017, I jumped over to private industry,
Yeah.
and been running ever since. I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, and WebRoot was interesting because that's where I got a chance to work with sales and with marketing and work with customers. And, I was, running IT teams and the security teams, helping do both. I got a chance to, we had, work extensively with the dev and the product teams. And I got a chance to work with the VP of Dev. Her and I worked a lot together, and I stood up an AppSec team and a CloudSec team, and I got a chance to actually learn about doing agile sprints and doing scrums and stuff, and and it was things that I had had never done before, and I loved it. I mean, we did it for 4 years. It just happens to be the company got acquired. WebRoot got acquired, and the company that was buying us already had a CISO, and so it's like, okay, now what? And so as I left WebRoot, that's where it was kind of interesting. I mean, I left WebRoot, and a really good friend of mine, Macy Dennis, was running a security practice out here. So I just jumped and joined him for a bit as a consultant, and just running around, helping fellow CISOs do assessments and run their security programs. And I was having a blast, just helping fellow CISOs out. But I wanted to go back and be a CISO. I wanted to go back and work, and I love working with the executive team and working with boards. And in that, as I went ahead and I left WebRoot, in that couple of month time frame there in 2019, this young lady contacted me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm writing a blog about CISOs. Would you help me out? And I'm like, okay, sure. I, if I'm not writing and publishing my own content, I'll write and I'll help other people. I don't really think nothing about it. I'll go ahead and I'll help people out. And so it was kind of interesting. I mean, she went ahead and, Leah went ahead and contacted me, and her name was Leah Walters, and she worked for a company in the UK, and I didn't know anything about it. I was just like, okay, this is what CISOs do. So I was helping her write her blog and write her article and stuff, and really good to go. And I said, all right, see you later. And I was just being friends and helping out. And about 6 weeks later, she contacts me and says, hey, I got a role for you. And I'm like, wait a minute, what?
She was a recruiter like me?
Yeah, I didn't realize she was a recruiter. I didn't even pay attention.
Yeah.
I was just helping her out. I didn't realize that she was a recruiter for one of these boutique firms in the UK. And apparently they handled all of the executive roles for SoftBank.
Right.
And I was like, wow, and so and the funny thing was, I didn't even know who SoftBank was at the time, and so it was kind of like, I was actually doing I was in a whole interview process to be the CISO at Logitech. But it's summertime, and what happens? Logitech's a company that's based, their headquarters is where? Switzerland. What happens during the summer? Everybody goes on vacation. And so I'm in the middle of the interview process, and everybody I needed to talk to, all of the executives, the CEO, everybody's on vacation. They're all in the south of France. They're all in Spain. And I'm like, I'm having to wait. I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And then she calls up and says, "Hey, I got this role for SoftBank," and I'm like, "All right." So I go, I had no idea what this was, but they worked with startups, and I love working with startups. So they flew me up to the Bay Area, and it was cool. I mean, I talked to the CTO, talked to the CEO, got those done real quick, and then I get put in a room with a whole bunch of these, the security team and the IT team were going to be together, and so I just got put in this room with a whole bunch of IT guys, and it was supposed to be kind of like a round robin where they were just sitting there at this table just answering me questions. And so they were asking me questions. We did those real quick. And they were like, "Hey, let's go eat." So we went downstairs to the cafeteria, got bowls of ramen, come back upstairs. And they're like, "Hey, we're going to be ripping out all of the infrastructure and going cloud first. And we're looking at, and so they started on this whiteboard, the whiteboards went the whole length of the room. They were like, "We're going to be building this, And so I just got up there and joined them. I said, "Okay, from a security perspective, this is what we should do." And so I just started drawing out, this is what I want to build for my security program. This is how I want to assess it. This is how we should handle audit.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to need, and then we started comparing technologies back and forth and what we should do and And my boss, he pops in, looks, sees what we're doing, and then he comes back a little bit later and says, "Come here." And I step out in the hallway. I'm like, "What's up?" Understand that this is like 4 hours later. They just like freaking left me in this room. And we're just having a blast out, doing architecture and just building it. And I love doing architecture and building stuff. And so he goes, "You got the job. We'll figure out everything else later. Go have fun." And I'm like, "All right." So I went back in there and we just kept on going. I got the job. So I figured, okay, so this is going to be my security network. And so we just started, doing this stuff. And then later, we went to dinner and like over a napkin, we just kind of figured out, what I was going to make and what I was going to do. And we kind of sorted it all out later. It flew me home that night. It was like, it was kind of the craziest interview I've ever had, but it's been, 5.5 years later, it's been amazing.
It sounds like a great. What better interview could there be rather than like sitting there and going through it and doing all that? And you got a chance to build everything. Like you were getting involved right from that. I mean, that's a rare opportunity for a CISO anyway, right? To go in and be able to build something from that level is a dream for most of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and my boss he's an ex-Googler, and so he's very focused on on the infrastructure and fail fast type of mentality, because he's had multiple startups of his own as well, and being able to have, and that's kind of a fresh way of being able to look at things. And it's like in the team that I've built, I told him, I said, I don't care if you break things in cyber, you break things, but you own it. You bring it to the team, and then we figure out, how to fix it and go on about our business. Now, obviously, if you keep breaking things over and over and over again, you and I are going to have a talk, but
right.
Don't hide things. You just be honest. It is what it is, and we go on about our business, and we work very, very close with compliance and with, IT and with, and audit and risk and all these other teams. And it's been a really unique experience.
Well, I think that's a great spot to finish part one of our interview with Gary Hayslip. Thank you for everybody for joining us at the Route to CISO podcast. And keep an eye out for the next episode, released every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Or if you want to watch us on video, then you can check us out on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.